Hello everyone and welcome to another Skyrim Anniversary Edition build, this time focused around the Imperial Legion and the Civil War Champions equipment. This creation adds two great sets of equipment, one Legion themed and the other Stormcloak themed. Don't fret, I will be making the Stormcloak champion as my next build, but for today we've got the Legion character to cover. The main skills for this build are one-handed, block, and heavy armour. One-handed is our main damage dealer. You'll be wanting to max out the Armsman perk in order to double base damage. I'd also highly recommend Fighting Stance, Savage Strike and Bladesman, the first two of which make your power attacks cheaper and give a chance to behead, and the final of which allows you to land critical hits with one-handed sword attacks. The block skill is crazy good with this build, like genuinely ridiculous just how well it worked out. With this build, the block skill is both a defensive and offensive one. On the left hand side of a tree, you invest perks to move fast with your shield, block arrows, and reduce elemental attacks. And on the right hand side, you gain the ability to do powerful bash attacks with a strong chance to disarm. This turns your shield into a deadly weapon that you should be using just as much as your sword. Use the power bash against enemies with powerful weapons in order to render them weaker, and save charges on your sword enchantment by killing weak foes with a shield bash. Finally, in main skills we have heavy armour. There are two main goals with this skill tree: max out your armour rating, and reduce the main penalty of heavy armour. To this extent you'll be wanting to get the conditioning perk on the left hand side of a tree, removing the weight of worn armour and stopping it from affecting your stamina drain while sprinting. Other than that, you'll just be wanting to take whichever perks ensure your armour is above 567. I actually went a little overboard here as I wanted to check if the matching set perk worked with Corrasion Club armour, and it does, so there's that to boost you too. On to minor skills now, where we have smithing and two-handed. Smithing is the reason why my heavy armour perk investment was a little much. By improving your armour, it'll be even easier to reach the cap. You're also going to want to improve your weapons though, and there's no cap here, so simply get that number as high as possible. The reason this is a minor skill rather than a major is because you only need to invest 2 perk points: Steelsmithing and Arcane Blacksmith. This does mean you can't improve any of your gear until you reach 60 in smithing, but once you hit that, all it will take is a bunch of steel ingots. As for two-handed, this is the secondary damage dealer of the build. The champion's gear also includes a two-handed weapon, so I didn't want to exclude it, but with how good the shield was, I had to put two-handed into the sidelines. Where it does come in handy though is while on horseback, as it looks damn cool to do these great big swings which cut down your foes at speed. For the two-handed tree, I kept the investment minor, getting champion stance to reduce power attack cost, but only investing in barbarian besides that. If you want a full breakdown of all the perks, then there will be a Nukes Dragons link in the description, which gives you all of the details. The standing stone for this build is the Atronach Stone. While the boost to Magicka and reduced Magicka regen are both null and void due to the build not using magic, the 50% magic absorption is incredible, making you far stronger when taking on dragons and mages. When it comes to leveling with this build, you'll be looking at an 80-20 split between health and stamina. Like I just mentioned, this isn't a spellcaster, so there's no need for Magicka. Health really is the most important by far, however I didn't want to neglect stamina completely, as slightly longer sprinting and a little extra carry weight can just make everything feel a tad more smooth. Finally, we come on to powers, where I went with the Fire Breath Shout. Make sure to learn all 3 words and meditate on it with party snacks in order to increase the damage further. With the fire resistance on the armour and fire enchantment on the weapons, it only felt right to go all out with the flame theme when it came to the powers too. You do also get Voice of the Emperor for being an Imperial, which can be useful early on if you get out of your depth and teamed up on. Speaking of said equipment, which I was doing before, full disclosure, I added in the Imperial bit because I know people are always like, oh, what's the race to the build? Because that happens all the time, and I added that bit in, and I didn't go back and edit this, so let's just keep rolling with this clunky bit. The weapons for this build are the Dragon's Oath Sword and Akatosh's Talon. Both of these weapons have powerful flame enchantments, which make his attacks with them deadly. They also look damn cool, so there's that too. And apparently I had nothing else to say about the weapons. They are really cool though, they're so badass, they look great. As for the armour, we have the Imperial Dragon Armour, boots, gauntlets, helmet and shield. In total, this set grants you 60% fire resistance, 30% shock and frost resistance, 10% faster health regen, 10% more damage with melee weapons, block 20% more damage with your shield, and deal double damage from shield bashes. The helmet also has a chance to cast Ebony Flesh on you when your health is low, but this is next to pointless, as I can't see it ever saving you. Everything else though is amazing, so I'll take one bad effect when all the others are top tier. You will of course want to also find yourself a nice ring and necklace to wear when playing as this character. Ideally something which increases your damage, or maybe boosts your resistances even further, if you fancy being more of a tank. Finally, you can grab the Adventurer backpack for extra carry capacity and 20 more points of stamina. First in the factions and quests section is the most important quest, the Battle of the Champions. This is what will get you all of your equipment, and it's important to start it right away. As soon as you enter Whiterun for the first time, head into the Drunken Huntsman and pick up a note off the counter to start the quest. You should then head to Castle Dour in Solitude, dress up in Imperial armour, and agree to be the champion for the Legion. This will get you all of your weapons and armour and then direct you to the battle itself, which I highly recommend avoiding until a little later on. I decided to try it out right away, and it didn't go well. I went back after levelling up though, and it was a cakewalk. Once you've got your armour, you're then going to want to join up with the Imperial Legion. It's important to only do this after you've got the Champion's gear, or else you won't be able to start the quest in the standard way, instead having to wait on a letter, which who knows when that will arrive. Plus, once you've got this god tier armour, you're going to have a nice easy time fighting back the Stormcloaks. In addition to the Legion, I'd recommend following the main quests, specifically helping out the Blades. They were once the protectors of the Emperor, and that will appeal a great deal to the Legion champion. His goal would be to reinstate them to this post, once the dragon threat is dealt with. Siding with the Blades does mean having to kill the dragon on top of the mountain, which I know some people have a problem with, so I won't force you to kill Party Snacks, but I do recommend murdering him. Final faction to join up with is the Companions. They're a fighting focused faction which fits in well with the character. Plus you'll need to get through Proving Honour in order to max out the Fire Breath Shout. As for a follower, I went with Belrond, the Solitude Merc. I decided I wanted to go with the Mercenaries of Solitude and Windhelm for the two champion builds, especially seeing as my other potential choice for this build was the Imperial Soldier who works for the East Empire Company, but it turns out she's classed as a civilian, so is one of the worst followers in the game, although still not as bad as Farkas. Just look at him. How did he even make it to the Companions? Anyway, get Belrond, he's a mercenary and they're great. Anyone who's been subscribed for a long time will know I've got a soft spot for mercenaries, so it's great to be able to use one. Do make sure to give them a decent weapon and some solid armour so they can stay up in a fight. For the most part, this character plays as a fairly standard sword and board warrior. You've got maxed out armour and great fire resistance, making you tough to kill for most enemies. Dragons in particular should be easy to take down most of the time. If it's an ice dragon, then sure, it can deal more damage, but you still have reasonable ice resistance, so it's not the end of the world. As mentioned near the start of the video, your shield is incredibly strong, so don't forget to use it as a weapon, especially when you want to save charges on your sword. Your two-handed weapon will make mounted combat a little easier, and I decided to purchase a horse and buy it the Imperial saddle to fit with the theme of the build, but was a little disappointed to find it's basically just a red cloth. When it comes to role-playing, the goal is to do anything and everything to help the Legion and the Empire. Become Thane of Solitude, wipe out the Dark Brotherhood, kill random Stormcloaks, that sort of stuff. I'd also like to say that this character is more than capable of taking on legendary difficulty. I did a couple of fights on this difficulty setting, and as long as I played smart, they were straightforward enough to get through. However, I'm still a bit rusty with Skyrim, so the majority of the footage is recorded on Master difficulty, and there the build absolutely slays, to a degree where it felt a little unfair at times. The Legion champion had always admired the Empire. He grew up in the Imperial City, and truly believed it was the greatest place in all of Tamriel, a shining marvel to signify what the Empire was capable of. As he grew from a boy into a man, he knew he wanted to help the Empire, but not just in some menial post. He desired to be a hero of the Empire, someone who would be talked about for ages, like Tiber Septim or the hero of Kvatch. Many of his friends joined the Legion and were set to guard duty within the city, or sent off to towns around Cyrodiil. That wasn't the life for him. He desired glory, and to serve a greater purpose than stopping the odd tavern brawl. And so, he headed north. The civil war in Skyrim had been the talk of the town for some time, and he decided that the best way to serve the Empire would be to bring Skyrim back into its fold. By defeating the rebels, he would restore order and help the Empire regain its former glory. As you may have gathered by now, the young man was naive and reckless. With a steel sword and some cheap iron armour, he believed he could fight any enemy he faced. But when he did reach the border of Skyrim, he quickly found he had bit off more than he could chew. He had marched his way right into a Stormcloak camp. He froze, seeing how strong they were, and how clearly outnumbered he was. Everyone was staring at him, and so he mustered up what courage he had left, knowing that he couldn't win, but wishing not to betray himself. He drew his sword and challenged the Stormcloaks. To his surprise, they laughed at him, and didn't raise their weapons to meet him. Instead, a leader stood up and asked him if he really thought he was on the right side. No answer escaped the young Imperial's lips, and the leader of the Stormcloaks seemed to take this as confirmation. He called over to a warrior sat by the fire, referring to her as the new recruit, and told her she would prove her place in his ranks by killing the Imperial. The woman drew a mighty battle axe and approached, swinging it wildly. It was all the Empire hopeful could do to avoid the attacks. Despite being a losing battle, he was able to keep her at bay, and was saved by an Imperial ambush. As the camp was distracted watching the fight, a mass of Legion soldiers had charged out from the woods, surrounding the Stormcloaks and forcing them to surrender. The young Imperial was saved! And then everything went dark. When he awoke, he was on a cart with his hands bound. It seemed he had been knocked out and accidentally captured alongside the rebels. He was sure that he would be able to explain the situation once they had stopped though. Right? And there we have it. I hope you have all enjoyed this Legion build. Make sure you are subscribed and have notifications on so that you can catch the Stormcloak counterpart, which will be going live the same time next week. If you want even more Civil War videos to watch, then feel free to check out my In Defense of a Legion and Stormcloaks videos, which I'll link in the description. As always, thanks for watching. Sarge out.